Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I want to run through some of the most important points that I figured would be super helpful to anyone that is looking to purchase an X300 or an X308 Jaguar XJ. These are topics that I've kind of come across through my ownership, things that I learned while I was looking, and it's going to be just the most important points to touch on while you're searching to make sure that you're informed in your decision, you get the right model, you get the right options, and you get the vehicle specifically that's been taken care of to what you need, and at the price point that makes sense for you. So keep watching to learn more about these things, and hopefully you can make an informed decision by the time you're done watching this video. One of the first things you should know is that, like any older vehicle, there's going to be a list of known issues that these vehicles have. Pretty much anything in this age range, mine specifically is 21 years old now, is going to have a list of issues that people have figured out over the years, things that are more likely to fail than on other cars, things like that. And it's good to understand what those are on this vehicle. Honestly, none of them are really that scary, which is nice. It makes them very approachable, but things to consider and definitely things to check out before you actually purchase one. It's good to ask some questions and do a little bit of digging to make sure you really can see what it is you're getting. Starting in the engine bay, which is where a few of these known issues are. Big ones are going to be the on the 4-liter V8, the timing chains and tensioners are known to fail at a reasonable mileage, but again, these cars, a lot of them will be at that mileage by the time you're buying them. So it's important to make sure that that's already been done, or at least that you are prepared to do it and have the budget to either have it done professionally or get the parts and do it yourself if you're a relatively competent mechanic. There are some special tools needed to lock the camshafts in place while you're doing the service, and a couple other things like that that you should take into account. So if you're not a comfortable mechanic, just be prepared to find a shop and maybe get an estimate on what something like that would cost before diving into one of these. One of the reasons I purchased this car specifically was that the timing chains had already been done, and another important one at the same time was the water pump as well. So that was already handled on this vehicle before I purchased it. And again, something that you should definitely look at before purchasing yours to make sure it's either been done or you're prepared to have it done. I'm not sure of the exact service interval, and obviously it's going to vary from vehicle to vehicle, but a lot of these things are up in the 100,000 mile range. And again, you should be expecting to get it done at that point. Usually you'll be able to hear the timing set getting a little noisy. It'll sound kind of rattly, or a little bit of grinding is the wrong word, but more of like a kind of just noisy chain rattle sound up front. If you're starting to hear that, I would steer clear of that specific Jag unless you're ready to do the timing chains and that is just the right deal for you. Continuing on while we're under the engine bay, you're going to want to look at your cooling hoses. Again, remember that these are likely going to be 20 years old, and not that it's an unreasonable failure for this car, but just know that the hoses are likely to be older, have the risk of being perished. A common one is actually on the XJR, going to be underneath the supercharger down the passenger side if you're in the States, or just if you're looking at a regular XJ, it'll be under the intake manifold, and it basically does this little dog leg here and runs back, and they commonly leak right down in the valley underneath here. Most of the ones I've seen have tended to be a minor leak, though I have heard of stories of people where it becomes a major one. So the intake manifold does have to come off to do that, or in my case, the charge air coolers and the supercharger has to come out to do that. I've actually already done the service on mine. If you're interested, I've got a separate video that we can link as well, so you can see what that actually looks like. I did all of the hoses in the engine bay, and I want to say it was probably about $500 worth of parts and quite a few hours worth of labor, but that was also me being extremely OCD and replacing almost every single hose in the entire car. So you really would only need to replace the ones that are obvious failure points, especially the accessible ones. You could technically just leave until they need to be serviced. Another possible failure point is going to be these bushings right here, actually, for the front suspension. I believe it is the V12s in the X300 that are going to be the most notable. So that's basically just something to check for to make sure that those are not completely blown out. I think it's the additional weight of such a heavy engine just tends to beat the heck out of them. And at the same time, I would check your ball joints and things like that if you are looking at one of the V12s specifically. I do know that they are a little more likely to suffer from that. Moving now to the interior of the car, we can see one of the known issues pretty quickly here, actually. The wood veneers over time will get a little cloudy and they can split or crack. So if you see here, this is probably the worst one in the whole car for me, and it does have these little splits in it. You can find sets of these on eBay, usually a nice clean one that doesn't have too many cracks or hardly any at all. Should run you in about the 200-ish range, maybe 250 for a decent one. And you can get ones that are in rougher shape for less than that as well. So if yours are really bad and you're just looking for a small upgrade, you could also do that. Or you could try and piecemeal it together. You might be able to save some money if you could buy maybe the four doors together and the dash separate. But do be careful, because each of the wood patterns on these is unique to the vehicle. So you don't want to get something that perhaps has like a nice, burl walnut finish on the dash, and then, a very different looking wood on the doors. So just be cautious of that. It is nice to try and buy a set from one full vehicle so that everything matches. The other two interior known issues are actually both in frame right now. One of them, as you can see on mine, is the headliner. Jags of many generations are notorious at this age for the headliner sagging, quite commonly in the rear. It's not a super expensive fix. I believe I've been quoted just a couple $100 to have it redone, so I will be getting that done in the near future. But something to just consider that, again, if you're looking at a Jag and it has a sagging headliner, it's not wildly expensive, but it is a bit of a process. So, just take that into account with your budget. Moving farther into the back here, this is the factory subwoofer. If you have a car that has the Alpine stereo, or I believe it was a Harman Kardon was also available, the subwoofers are known to have an issue where the foam supporting the cone perishes. So if you turn the stereo on, which I would suggest you do before buying the car, and just find something with a little bit of bass, turn the bass up and see if the subwoofer rattles. If the subwoofer rattles, it is a repairable fix. It's nothing too bad. You can actually pull the subwoofer out and replace the foam. I have done that on mine, and I have a whole video on that as well. I believe the whole thing cost me about $14 and a few hours of work, but definitely worth checking that to see if that's something you're going to need to do or not. And some people decide, rather than fixing the stock subwoofer, even though I find it perfectly adequate, they'll upgrade to something a little bigger, though that will consume some of your trunk space, because you're likely not going to be able to find one that fits this form factor to replace the factory one. And the last known issue that I have on my list here is going to be the transmission. So I'm actually slightly exempt from this issue. Being an XJR that I purchased, I actually have a different gearbox in this than what the regular XJs would have. The units that were put in the regular XJs are known for having issues, so it is worth making sure your transmission has been serviced, ideally that some of those issues have been mitigated. The XJR actually uses a Mercedes-sourced 5-speed that's a little more robust and has just been known to be stout and trouble-free. But if you are looking at an XJ from the X308 generation, you should definitely check the transmission to see if it's been worked on or if it's a potential failure point that you might have to deal with in the future. So just a consideration, but that's probably going to be one of the more notable, high-dollar items if you have to replace the transmission. So just make sure that it's either been serviced or has been really well taken care of and is showing no signs of issues. And as an honorable mention for the known issue thing, check to see if your auto-dimming rear view mirror still works. Small, little quibble I had, but mine had this amber-colored wavy line through it when I first got the car. I've since replaced it with one that I sourced from a junkyard. However, if you do see a section of the rear view mirror looks almost stained, that means that the auto-dimming has failed on yours, and just not the greatest to look at. It's a very minor inconvenience, but something to consider as well. Since we're on the topic of known issues and things that may end up being repairs needed, the idea of parts availability freaks a lot of people out with these things. Some people think that it's going to be extremely difficult to get a hold of parts, or if they do, they're going to be prohibitively expensive. And in almost all cases, I've found that not to be the case, actually. The parts have been readily available from suppliers such as Rock Auto, honestly. I would say the vast majority of what I've bought has come from Rock Auto. The prices have been the same or maybe 10% more than what I would pay for my Ford Crown Vic that I used to have. So nothing massively, wildly above budget. When you get into the more bespoke parts, some of like the stock Bilstein shock absorbers or the specific Michelin tires and things like that, they will be a little more pricey than some of the other stuff. But that is to be expected when you're buying a car that MSRP'd in the high $70s, low $80,000 range back in the year 2000. So, you know, a consideration is, you know, you can get cheaper spec parts. Usually when I can, I try to get OE ones. I have found that honestly, there is a really notable difference in them. My shock absorbers are starting to wear. I am probably going to be replacing those soon, and I do intend to get the original Bilstein sport suspension. So, you know, just something to consider there. But the reality is you can find plentiful parts. They are readily available. And like I said, Rock Auto has a lot. I've also found some on JagBits. Then there's also Auto House AZ, HAUS, has actually taken care of me on a few things as well. So, you know, and honestly, the forums are super helpful. So if you're ever stuck and you can't find something, pop onto the Jag forums and they will absolutely get you taken care of. They've pointed me the right way so many times. Now let's get on to the more fun stuff. The features. That's one of my favorite things about this car. There are many different specs that you can get the XJ in, and it suits all different tastes. So as you can see, again, I have the XJR model. I was a little more performance oriented while I was looking at it, but I still wanted a comfortable luxury car. There are several different ways that you can buy this vehicle, and again, your personal taste is going to affect which model makes sense for you. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of the different features that come with the different models, and hopefully that can help guide you a little bit there as well. We'll start with the basic XJ. The XJ is the basic sedan for this model year. It came with a 4-liter V8, making 290 horsepower. If you're looking at the earlier ones, the X300s, you could get that with a straight 6, a V12, and then if you got the R of that generation, it would come with the supercharged straight 6 as well. The idea behind the XJ was still a proper luxury vehicle, but with some of the more modern features and comforts you know, that you would expect from some of the newer vehicles as well. So it tied kind of traditional luxury with modern creature comforts and did an extremely good job at it. The basic XJ was actually loaded with a lot of lovely features right from the base model. So if you're looking for the most cost-effective luxury car you can, even just a regular XJ will be leaps and bounds above buying something of a comparable price. Used value on these is still remarkably low, though it is starting to climb. At the time I was looking at this, you could very comfortably get into a well taken care of regular XJ for somewhere in the realm of about $3,500 to $4,000, and you could get really clean examples for $5,000 or $6,000, which I think is a bargain. And again, the features are amazing. I mean, you're going to get power everything, leather, wood, a very quiet, comfortable car to drive, and you know, just all around every feature you could imagine, and some that'll surprise you for the year 2000 in an extremely affordable package. Let's say you're that little bit more fancy though, or you just want to be extra bougie. You could always get the Van Pla edition, which is the more luxury edition. I'm going to show you the rear of my XJR here, which is going to be very different, but point out a couple things that you could get on the Van Pla that really set it apart. The first thing here is that the door on the rear, this is a short wheelbase car. You could get a long wheelbase Jag. I know for sure you could get the Van Pla in long wheelbase. I believe you could maybe even get a base model XJ in long wheelbase as well. But that adds extra length to the whole car, and it's all in the rear door. So you get extra rear legroom and just that more limo-esque experience. It's not ridiculous, it's just a matter of inches, but it does make a big difference. And it also has a bit more of a grand and impactful appearance when you pull up somewhere. This is actually a relatively small car, and the long wheelbase just makes it that little bit more, you know, bold and kind of makes more of a statement when you pull up. The Van Pla also offered a couple of extra luxury features, a few of which were in the back. So the front, in mine at least, does have heated seats, but in the Van Pla you could also get rear heated seats as well, which was a very cool feature if you ask me. I don't believe all models came with it. You would have to search and make sure the model you were looking at had it, but it's easy to tell because it had this additional rear tray and these two buttons back here in the rear seat for the rear seat heaters. Another feature that the Van Pla had was picnic tables, something I honestly wish my XJR had, and I have recently found a way to adapt them into this. I'm still going back and forth on if I want to do it or not. But there are wood picnic tables here that will fold down and give you a surface to do your work or eat your lunch while you're being chauffeured around. Again, just for that uber luxury feel, I thought that was such a cool feature that you could get. And again, I believe that was Van Pla specific, but can be adapted into other models with some work. So while you can probably tell that the Van Pla was set up more for being driven, I opted to go for the XJR, which was more of the driver's car. And honestly, this is my favorite model by far. And, you know, again, it's mostly for me being more of a spirited driver, you know, really enjoying driving as a passion, but also wanting something comfortable and luxury. I found that you could not find a better combination in one vehicle. So the XJR is going to come with sportier wheels. These ones specifically are called the Asteroid wheels. They're 18-inch. You're going to end up with only subtly different badging, actually. Really, on the back, it's the same exact shape and color and very subtle. That's the only indicator on the rear that this is an XJR, other than the larger exhaust tips here. Normally, you would have a light without a chrome surround, so the keen eye could point out or pick out that this was an XJR from that as well. However, I have replaced mine with ones with the chrome surround, as mine were a little aged, and I actually like the look of the chrome on this vehicle. Inside, there are a few indicators that come with the XJR as well. You end up with this very subtly stamped XJR logo in the steering wheel, and on the dash, you just have this very small supercharged emblem right in there as well. And that's it. It doesn't say XJR in big ostentatious letters anywhere. It was meant to still be somewhat of a gentleman's performance car, which I really, really appreciate. The only other major difference for the XJR is going to be these seats. You end up with these really lovely front buckets that have kind of the perforated, more sporty looking leather, the bigger bolsters, and are extremely comfortable to drive. You know, all around, I actually like the look of these better than the other seats, which can be a little more frilly looking sometimes. So they're a little more sport oriented. And really, that is about the extent of it on the interior. The other thing to consider is that often these cars will be slightly more spec'd up, as the XJR was pretty much the top of the line at the time. So again, mine has the Alpine factory sound system. It has every feature under the sun. It's got the auto-dimming mirror. It's got the, you know, cruise control. It's got power tilt column. It's got heated seats. It's got power adjustable seats with memory. I mean, I'm still discovering features on this car that I'm blown away that it had for the year 2000. So again, that's a cool thing if you are looking at the XJR, that oftentimes it will have some of the nicer features automatically just because the person buying it could afford it. But you all knew I wasn't going to stop there. That's not my favorite part of the XJR. That is my favorite part of the XJR. By modern standards, not a gigantic and crazy supercharger, but this is an Eaton M112, which is the same unit that the Terminator Cobra of Ford fame used at the same time. So this Eaton drives the 290 horsepower up to 370 horsepower and 390 foot-pound of torque from the factory. Under the hood, still not super ostentatious, but you do get the supercharged lettering on there, and of course the V8 emblem on top. The best thing about this, I would say, is how well made these engines are. You can easily bump the power on these very significantly by just doing some bolt-on applications without needing to dive into the internals of them. And that obviously excited me because, again, I am more of a performance-oriented person. So with just a pulley and a upgraded intercooler pump to help circulate the coolant a little better, boom, you're well into the 400 horsepower range very easily. The last performance thing is the suspension. You did get the Bilstein Sport suspension, and it handles extremely nicely. I should also note that some vehicles of the later models of this generation came with what was known as CATS suspension, C-A-T-S, and that was the adaptive suspension technology that went on to make the X350, which is the next generation of the this body style, look drive so fantastic. It was an excellent piece of technology, and brought its own set of trouble with some of the struts failing and things like that. But some of these cars did actually have CATs, and you can tell by looking at the top of the suspension, like the strut tower here, if you have what looks like an air line going into that, and usually a little plug plugging into it, that is the control system for CATs. If you just have a regular old bolt and washer and bushing here, you just got the regular Bilsteins, which are perfectly fine. But if you are interested in the CAT suspension, that's the easy way to tell if you have it. And of course, just be aware that it may be a little more maintenance down the road if you do get that feature. And of course, the last thing, which I will show you in all its glory, is the R grille. which I like this grille treatment very much more than the stock XJ treatment. It just is much tougher with the chrome mesh. That is proper metal and everything in there, and it just feels, I don't know, feels like you just robbed a bank when you drive this thing. Anyway, enough about my car. So what's it like to drive one of these things? It's another important question. If you're going to be living with this every day as your daily driver, it's important to know what the experience is going to be like and what to expect. For me, again, I was looking for a very comfortable, understated vehicle that still provided some of the performance and fun that I enjoyed from some other vehicles. A lot of newer performance cars all have to have this Nürburgring track tune thing going on, where sure, it's a luxury car, but you sit in, the seats are firm, and sure, they support you well, but for a long road trip, you start to get fatigued. They don't have that kind of soft and suppleness that cars used to be able to have before everything had to go around the Nürburgring in under 10 minutes. So the big thing I would say about this car is just that it's such a good balance of, when you need it, the power is there, it is comfortable, it is quiet, it just glides along, and I would say, if that's what you're looking for, it's hard to find a better vehicle for the same money. And that's not to mention, if you do need to merge onto the highway, stab your toe into it, especially if you click the button under the pedal, that it just wakes up, it sings to life, flies along. Even the non-R models are plenty fast, but with the supercharger, the thing hauls frickin' buns. And it just does everything that you can throw at it extremely well. It's a beautiful car, honestly very sleek and low. I have not lowered mine, but I would say the roofline's probably as low as my lowered Crown Vic was, but yet also has great ground clearance. I mean, this thing was clearly designed to handle English roads. It can go over curbs and, potholes and, up ramps and things like that with zero issues, for how sleek it looks. Another consideration I would say is going to be fuel economy. While I'm less picky about that, the car actually does a great job. I get in the kind of low to mid 20 mile per gallon range with mine, unless of course I'm in the boost a lot, which I think is fantastic for a car of its age. And then there's the fact that it has, I believe, a 23 gallon gas tank, which puts it at about a range of 550 to 575 miles. I'm pretty sure you could basically drive from the north end of England to the south end of England on one tank of gas. Pretty cool, right? Again, you're going to have very modern features in a car of this age. Really, the only thing I've added is a Bluetooth adapter, which wasn't even a hardwire one. I just plugged the thing in, got Bluetooth and hands-free calling, and I've been happy with it. Honestly, I've not needed a single thing on top of that. So yeah, as far as actually driving one of these things every day, I could not speak more highly of it. But are they reliable? That's an important question. So reliability is, I would say, a topic with two answers. This car has never let me down. It's never broken down on me. It's never failed on me. It has never left me stranded or made a terrifying noise that has made me stop driving it right away. It has just gone and gone and gone and gone with no issues. The flip side to that is there have been issues that have cropped up that needed to be addressed, but none of them catastrophic failures that forced my hand. It's always given me time to get the parts I need, to work on it, all while still dailying the vehicle without hurting it. So they're very well made, and from what I've seen, it's been extremely unlikely to have a critical failure on one of these. I believe the main one that I've heard people have an issue with on the XJR is if their intercooler pump fails, you can have an overheating issue, but that will let you know very quickly with the temperature gauge. If that thing spikes all the way to the hot side of the gauge, pull the heck over right now, because these engines are sensitive to overheating. And again, it's a relatively cheap and easy fix, but again, that has not happened to me. And that's another preemptive service item that you can take care of as well if you were so inclined. I did upgrade mine, so it's brand new. But again, this car has given me zero issues and has never just failed on me. But how much should I expect to pay for one of these, I hear you asking? Well, it depends on when you're watching this video, because this price could change, and honestly, again, the XJRs have appeared to go up in price in the last couple of months, but again, that could just be a false bubble with honestly all car prices going up right now as well. I paid roughly $8,000 for mine, but I was very particular about the combination of paint and leather color as well, right? So I held out for the specific British Racing Green and oatmeal colored interior in the XJR with the asteroid wheels, and at the time mine had 68,000 miles. So really, it was a really good package, and also it had the timing chains and water pumps replaced. It was altogether an extremely, really nice example. So $8,000 being what I would consider somewhat towards the upper end, unless you're getting an extremely low mileage vehicle. And at the time I was looking, I was seeing regular XJs easily in the upper 3,000 range, still with reasonable miles, good features, good color combinations, and things like that. So I would say, depending on time, I'd expect to pay anywhere from perhaps $4,000 up into the 8 to 10 range, depending on if you're looking at an XJR that's in extremely good shape. So what are the engine options? I touched on this a little bit earlier in the video, but I should get a little deeper into that, I figure. The earlier X300s could come with a 6-cylinder, or a V12, or a supercharged 6-cylinder in the R model. I actually came very close to purchasing one of the V12 models. They make about 300 horsepower, obviously silky smooth, fantastic engine, especially if you get the late model. I believe it's the 6-liter one, where they've kind of sorted out some of the spontaneous combustion issues that the earlier V12s had in the XJS. So, you know, you can really look for more of your traditional English powertrains in the earlier X300. Again, they were big on the 6-cylinders and the V12s. When you get to the X308, which was the facelifted one that I have here, you really only had the two options. You had the 4-liter V8 or the 4-liter supercharged V8 for the R model. Again, 4-liter V8, 290 horsepower, and I believe over 300 foot-pound of torque. And you get, with the supercharged model, 370 horsepower and 390 foot-pound of torque, which is a ton for a 20-year-old vehicle. I believe this was actually one of the most powerful production vehicles on the road at the time, which is pretty awesome. So last, and not because you asked, but because I'm a little tired and I feel like you guys should know this, what are some of the unique features about this car that I really like? Some of the cool stuff that, you know, just never clicked with me until I owned one. A lot of them are just little details that make it stand out from other cars that I've owned or seen, but they're just a handful of, you know, really cool little details on this car that really, really sold me on it. And again, I found all of these over time, and each time I found one, it just made me love it even more. So let me show you some of these cool things I came across. Number one is glaringly obvious, but it's going to be this clamshell hood. It makes such a statement when you open that thing up and it flips forward, which you really don't see on hardly any cars other than, you know, older or more exotic ones. And it's just such a cool statement piece. When you go to a car show or something like that, it really turns heads. People are kind of wondering what it is. And especially for a vehicle that was made as recently as this one, I just think it's such a neat touch. Plus it's nice that it has the gas struts so it stays up, you know, when you're working on it. Second, and you guys may laugh at me for this, is the wiper. And yes, I mean wiper, not wipers. This car only has one, and it is mounted in the center, and it does a huge arc over the whole windshield, and that is it. And it is such an awesome thing. Everyone that has noticed that little detail seems so surprised by the fact that it has just a single wiper blade that covers the whole windscreen. Genuinely, I thought that was such a cool thing. I had no idea until the first time I used it. And it really just is something that makes me giggle almost every time. Plus, auto wipers, which is really nice. So when it's raining, it senses it and cleans the windshield for you. You just leave it on the auto setting and it takes care of it for you, which again, super awesome feature. Next up is the emblems. This is the Growler emblem, which is represented on quite a few places on the car. So it's going to be the center caps for the wheels. Mine are green, which matches the exterior color of my car. I feel like I've seen these in red on some as well. You also get the Growler on the front here, and this very cool kind of pewter colored emblem up here. And then we're going to introduce you to the Leaper. Now I think in Europe they actually deleted this on the XJRs, but in the States here, it is still on the XJR model, and I am so glad because I absolutely love this emblem. There's something so cool about still having a big chrome hood ornament on this car. And again, I just love the way it looks. This is another one that you guys may think is silly, but the turning radius of this car is amazing. Again, you can tell it was a vehicle designed to drive in England. For a relatively decent sized sedan, you know, small by some of the newer US standards, but still, it's a pretty big, comfy car. It will turn so tight and make U-turns so easy and fit into parking spaces and everything. It is remarkable. I can park this thing in a compact car spot because it's nice and narrow, albeit it's relatively long, it still fits in the length of a compact car parking space. And again, the thing will just turn so tight, even compared to my Crown Vic. Again, I thought that thing was okay, you know, not great, obviously, but this thing just, I mean, it's a whole lane shorter on a U-turn, which is really, really useful. All right, I know, another dumb one, but this is something that means a lot to me as a guy that works on his car a lot, is the jacking system. These little caps down here pop out, and the floor jack, instead of going on the pinch weld here, actually has a bar that slides into a tube that's mounted right here, and you've got one of these on each corner, and you jack the car up from that point rather than from the pinch weld here. And the jack is one of the most awesome factory jacks I've ever used. It's actually got a ratcheting handle, so you don't have to keep taking the stupid handle off and moving it around, or do a million turns because it's got low leverage because it's one of those spinny ones. It's just a nice solid handle, and then it ratchets back, and it will get this thing up in the air in no time, and it's really solid. So, seems silly, but it does come with a full-size spare, and underneath that, again, one of the best factory jacks that I have ever worked with, which I just think is so cool. If you're in the States, you get another Leaper emblem right here, but if you're in the UK or Europe, you get a turn signal, a little side marker turn signal. This is actually an amber lens in Europe. I've played with the idea of seeing if I could combine the ideas and actually have this little Leaper symbol that's also a side marker turn signal. We'll see if I get adventurous enough to do that, but that's probably about 47th on the list of things I need to do. This is for a car phone. If you're lucky enough, you may find a model that was actually spec'd with a car phone that's stored in the glove box. Mine did not have that, but I'm okay with it because it would be horribly outdated and likely not work, but still a hilarious and cool feature. I did look at one. I believe the V12 model that I was considering buying had a car phone in it, and I just thought that was absolutely hilarious that you have the full-on number pad here to use a car phone in 2000. But can't blame people. This has been a Jag thing for a long time, but the analog clock in the center of the dash is just something that I've always loved. It's always the right time, so even when you don't have the power on in the car, you know what time it is. There's just something so classy about that. I've also seen people put a boost gauge there if they have the XJR. And the last fantastic quirk of this car is that it has the absolute worst cup holders known to man. I cannot stress how terrible these cup holders are. I have very little to say about this car that is bad, but this is it. If you have anything larger than a half-full small coffee cup in here, it's going over. God forbid you breathe on the throttle more than a quarter, or go around a corner more than an eighth of a turn on the steering wheel because something's going flying. When I have anything in these cup holders, I at all times have one hand on the drinks because they will spill. They do not hold bottles, and you cannot put two of anything medium, large, anything like that at the same time. It just, I don't know what they were thinking. So, that being said, they did fix that in the X350 model, which was a really nice touch, but these are just hot garbage. So anyway, I hope this was an informative video for you. I hope this guides some of your decisions as far as when you're looking for one of these things to pick it up. Genuinely, if you're considering getting one, do it. These things are such great cars. I cannot speak highly enough for them. Take your time, be patient in the one that you pick, make sure it has the features you want, make sure it's in the condition you want, make sure it has the mileage you want. You know, hold out for that right model. I spent many months really just waiting for the right combination to come along, and it did. I almost pulled the trigger on a couple that I'm glad I didn't. There was a black on black XJR that was a little cheaper, you know, just a couple thousand more miles. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't have made me as happy as one, you know, the color combination that I wanted and things like that. So just make sure you're patient with it. And when you do find that one, you know, talk to the owner, look at it yourself, or have it inspected just to make sure that some of these items are checked off if they're things you don't want to deal with, or make sure you have it in your budget to potentially deal with them if they do end up being a reality that you have to face. Nothing is terrible, nothing is scary. So really, don't let those turn you off. I would just say, be cognizant that they exist. So anyway, hopefully this has been a helpful video for you. If you're looking for one right now, I'd love to hear what your ideal combination would be in the comments. If you have questions, if there's something I didn't answer, the weird Daimler models I didn't mention, stuff like that, throw questions in the comments. I love answering those. I've done a ton of research. There's a ton of stuff I did not mention in this video as well that I know, because frankly, there's a limit to how much time I want to put in one of these, because there's a limit to how much you guys are going to watch. So yeah, ask away. I'd love to help as much as humanly possible. And again, if you guys are shopping for one right now, let me know what you're looking for in those comments. I'd love to see what the market's looking like. What color combo, what model interests you, and I'd love to see what's out there and what people are hunting for these days. So signing off for now, but hopefully this has been informative, and we'll see you on the next one. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, because we have some great Jaguar content. We're going to continue generating more. So yeah, just stay tuned, because it just gets better from here. If you haven't seen this already as well, we have a Patreon now and are trying to grow this channel. So if you like what you see, if this has been helpful in guiding your decision, or if one of our repair videos has been helpful to, guide you through some project that you're working on or something like that, please consider becoming a patron. It really does help us keep this thing moving along. We'll provide a link in the description. There's also one on our channel page as well. And really every patron we get on Patreon has been super helpful. If you are interested in getting something more tangible, we have our web store. Go ahead and buy some merch with the Low-Tech logo on it and support us out there. Tell people about us. Every little thing helps, and we really can't thank you enough. Just that little bit of extra effort with a little bit of money that you get our way, it just adds up and really, really keeps us able to do what we're doing, and hopefully keep helping you guys with more cool content, more informative stuff. So again, just wanted to throw that in there. We really, really appreciate it if you do.